Hello everyone, welcome to the channel, a spiritual user manual for life. This is the inaugural video of the channel. Its title is From Jesus Christ to a Course in Miracles and the Seth readings of Jane Roberts. In this video, I present two events that produced a wealth of spiritual and metaphysical knowledge. The first, that of the ministry of Jesus Christ, is very well known. The second, which is a continuation of the first, and is another manifestation of that unknown inner spiritual reality which we are slowly becoming aware of, gave us A Course in Miracles and the Seth books of Jane Roberts. They cover all sorts of spiritual topics and provide essential knowledge necessary for dealing with the numerous objectives and challenges that life presents to us individually and collectively. Taken together, they amount to a spiritual user manual for life. Let's begin. Whenever you acquire something for the first time, like a computer, a tool, or some sort of machinery, there's usually an instruction manual on how to use it. Depending on its complexity, there might even be a course for it. Or let's say you want to train for a profession like a doctor, computer programmer, auto mechanic, or musician. First, you would go to school to learn the academic portion. Then engage in training or apprenticeship, where you could practice what you've learned. After some time, usually years, you would develop a level of competence. With more time and experience, not only would you get better, you would then start to experiment, innovate, grow the field, and be of greater service to others. Old Chinese proverb, planning for a year, plant rice. Planning for a decade, plant a fruit tree. Planning for a lifetime, educate a person. Now how about if you're planning for eternity? We've each been given the ultimate gifts, eternal life, and to live it to the fullest, the most powerful tool in all of creation, a mind. Our Creator, being fully aware of the unlimited potentials of these gifts and the amount of learning necessary to develop a level of competence, provided us with instruction manuals, teachers, and an unlimited amount of practice opportunities. Looking around at the numerous challenges that exist in the world today, one can't help but ask a bunch of questions. How do we solve them? Are some of them even solvable? Where do we look for solutions? Religion, prayer, science, medicine, logic, the past. Are there instruction manuals, teachers? Is this the curriculum of life? Is there a better way? How do we know if we're progressing in the right direction? There are numerous belief systems that seek to provide answers. Organized religion with their hierarchical structure and dogma leads the way. The Big Four, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, and Buddhism, account for over 75% of the world's believers. Judaism deserves mention as Christianity and Islam have roots in it. Other notables are Sikhism, Taoism, Confucianism, and Shintoism. Indigenous beliefs deserving mention are Voodoo, Shango, Shamanism, and Santeria. These systems of beliefs have been around for thousands of years. They've had a profound impact on the societies where they are practiced. Now let's dive a little deeper. First of all, nothing happens, regardless of what, where, how, when, or to whom it affects, does so by accident. Everything occurs in a divine order, whether we see it, understand it, or accept it. It was intentional. With that being said, in the course of human history, certain events have had an impact way beyond the immediate location and time in which they occurred. Two of them are the subjects of this video. The first was over 2,000 years ago, and the second in the prior century. History shows they are connected. Let's explore. The first event began with the birth of Jesus Christ. This occurred, according to historians, somewhere between 6 and 2 BC, in the town of Bethlehem, Judea, modern-day Palestine. His parents, Joseph and Mary, were Jewish, and he was raised in the Judaic faith. When he became of age, he started preaching a New Testament and performing numerous miracles. This new message was in direct conflict with that of the religious elite and eventually led to his demise. During the time of his ministry, no known writings were made of his preachings or teachings. Writings based on the recollection of others would appear several decades later. A key figure after Jesus' departure was the Apostle Paul. Though never having met Jesus, he is credited with writing the earliest materials of this new sect of Judaism, Christianity. He was also instrumental in extending it to non-Jews, setting it on a path that eventually led to its separation from Judaism. The writings of Paul and others became the New Testament. So why did Jesus appear when he did? What was the state of society's consciousness for the areas he traveled and beyond? What were the probable paths ahead for them? An awareness of this overall state should provide some understanding for what followed. For just like the past shapes the present, the future also influences it by calling us forward. Let's continue. The Roman Empire was the dominant power during this time. It ruled over most of Western Europe, the Middle East, and Northern Africa. It was a warrior empire, forever at war for territorial expansion, external defense, or internal suppression. Socially and legally, it maintained a tiered system with Roman citizens at the top. Economic disparities were severe. Slavery was legal and common. Religiously, polytheism, the worship of multiple gods, was the norm. Other religions were allowed as long as they honored the Roman gods. People being eaten by animals and men fighting to the death were popular forms of entertainment. Judea, the land of Jesus, was part of the Roman Empire, having been conquered several decades prior to his birth, as was Roman custom. Conquered states were allowed a certain degree of self-rule as vassal states. King Herod, who was the ruler of Judea around the time of Jesus' birth and also died in that same period, got his appointment from Rome. After his death, Judea was divided into 3 parts, each ruled by one of his 3 sons. There was constant friction between the people of Judea and the Roman Empire, flaring into war on several occasions. Religiously, even though Judaism was the sole religion, it was divided into several sects: Sadducees, Pharisees, Essenes, and Zealots, each practiced by different segments of the population and not necessarily in a harmonious manner with each other. The Christian sect was created after the departure of Jesus. So these were turbulent times. Conditions were ripe for some form of change, and the Prince of Peace, Jesus, came and delivered that message. His testament was not only for that time and place, it was also for the future, a new rationale for how life should be lived. By the 2nd century, Christianity became a new religion, separate and independent from Judaism. It then went on to transform the Middle East, Europe, and the world. Today, it is the most widely practiced religion by population and geography. Its main religious text, the Bible, continues to be the world's best-selling book. Let's do a quick drive-by through history to see how this first event shaped the future that followed and got us to the second event. In 313, the Emperor Constantine made Christianity legal in the Roman Empire, setting it on a path to becoming the empire's official religion in 380. In 382, the Council of Rome adopted the Bible as its official canon. Numerous splits occurred in the following centuries. We will focus on the branch that dominated Western Europe. After the fall of the Western Roman Empire in 476, Europe entered a period known as the Dark Ages. The Church rose to fill this void. It was very successful in this, as its influence dominated virtually all of society. However, challenges appeared from time to time. Early in the 7th century, Islam rose out of Arabia and spread like wildfire throughout the Middle East, Asia, Southern Europe, and down to Africa. The Church pushed back against this expansion through several crusades. The first one was initiated in November 1095. But the results were limited. Islam remained dominant in all these areas except Southern Europe and continued to spread to other areas. In 1517, Martin Luther, a German monk, published a list of 95 complaints against the Church. This protest would grow into the Protestant movement that gave birth to new sects of Christianity. One of them was Anglicanism, the Church of England, which started in 1534. Though its initial motivation for the separation was for a separation. The King of England's desire to divorce his wife. An outgrowth of this new sect was the Puritans. They eventually separated from the Anglican Church. It was too similar to the Roman Catholic Church for their liking. In pursuit of religious freedom, they migrated, starting in 1620, to the British colony in North America. That colony would go on to become the USA in 1776. Other areas of society seeking alternatives shaped the way forward. Starting in the mid-14th century, the Renaissance began. This ended the Dark Ages. It saw a rise in the merchant class that enabled other pursuits such as the arts, philosophy, technology, and trade to flourish. Ironically, the lands under Islamic control invaded during the Crusades provided many of the resources that enabled this rebirth. The Islamic territories were more developed than those ruled by the Catholic Church. Next came the Enlightenment period. Reason, logic, and science led the way. Many of the ideas coming out of this period provided the ideological foundation for Western societies. The U.S. Constitution and preamble, its economic and political structures, were crafted using them. The separation between church and state, which got codified in the U.S. Constitution, was another of its ideas. This continued the decline of the church's influence. Next came the Industrial Revolution. It produced many new inventions and industries that radically transformed societies. This led to a significant increase in urbanization, as many left the farms and countryside for life in the growing cities. Many social and economic problems followed, though these communities were more secular. The problems they encountered provided new opportunities for the church to serve. Numerous sects continued to form to address the diverse needs and challenges of these growing communities. The Industrial Revolution was very significant to the USA, for it created a path that allowed it to become first an industrial power and then a world superpower. At the end of World War II, the USA emerged as the world's lone superpower. The USSR would later become a competitor. However, it had limitations. This war, coming right after World War I and the Great Depression, inflicted major damage to most of Europe, the Middle East, Asia, and the Pacific. The USA, except for Hawaii, was untouched by it. As a result, it was able to ramp up its economic might to provide the resources that enabled the Allies, which included the USSR, to defeat the Axis powers. Because of this supremacy, it dominated the worldwide rebuilding and the New World Order that followed, based on all that had occurred to date. This seemed to be America's manifest destiny. However, all was not well in paradise. Numerous problems simmered beneath the surface. They came to a boil in the decade of the 1960s. Here's some of the major ones. The Cuban Missile Crisis, a major flashpoint of the military and ideological struggle between the USA and USSR that almost led to nuclear war. The Civil Rights Movement, the struggle to end legal and institutionalized segregation and racism. The assassinations of the Kennedy brothers and Martin Luther King added more fuel to this fire. Opposition to the Vietnam War, unlike World War II, many saw this war as unjustified and were against it. The maturing of the environmental movement. The growing recognition that the Industrial Revolution and capitalism had detrimental side effects to the planet and its inhabitants. There was a need for change. The explosion of the sexual revolution, which included fights for women's rights and that of the emerging LGBTQ community. These would seem to be growing pains of any society. Other societies in the past had their share of problems and seemingly found solutions. However, these solutions were either wars, civil or among nations, territorial expansions, colonies, new products, trains, planes, automobiles, new societal structures, democracy, communism, capitalism, or new laws, Magna Carta, 14th Amendment, Voting Rights Act. Yet the problems kept coming back, even multiplying. It was time for a new set of ideas, a new rationale. Those that we were working with had maxed out. We needed to get to the root causes of these problems and truly solve them for all time. Consciousness was ripe for another change. The future was ready to step in again. This gets us to the second event. It took place in New York State during the 1960s. Geographically speaking, in two areas, New York City and Elmira, a couple hundred miles northwest of the city. This might seem to qualify as two events. However, they shared several physical similarities, and content-wise, can be considered as two parts of a single course. The first part, the preparation, was delivered in the city, and the second, the advanced portion, in Elmira. As we delve deeper, this will hopefully become apparent. Starting in October 1965 and continuing through 1972. Helen Schuckman, a psychologist, channeled or scribed the book, A Course in Miracles. William Thetford, who was also a psychologist and headed up the project they worked on at Columbia University in New York City, transcribed the writings into longhand. Several sections were produced. The first three, the text, workbook, and manual for teachers, formed the core of the book. In 1976, the first version of the book was published. 3 other versions, Original Edition, Sparkly, and Circle of Atonement, have since been produced. The book, Journey Without Distance, is an excellent account of the events that led to its creation. In December 1963, Jane Roberts, a writer, started channeling Seth, an energy personality essence as he described himself. She was located in Elmira. Her husband, Robert Butts, a painter, served as her handler and scribe. Their work continued until Jane's death in 1984. Her channeling was the more traditional, in that she went into a trance and her body was taken over by the Seth personality. During their 20-year collaboration, countless sessions were held that included classes, interviews, readings, and dictation. Most significant of all were the books produced. 10 were stated to have been directly authored by Seth. The range of materials covered in them bordered on the unlimited. They challenged and significantly expanded our understanding and knowledge of everything. Her first book on Seth, the Seth material, was published in 1969. A Course in Miracles, in its words, is a required course. Its objective is to help the individual identify all the obstacles within himself that prevents him from being his true and best self. To do that, he must first become aware of his thoughts, beliefs, feelings, sense of self, and how he has misused his mind with brutal honesty. In so doing, he begins to understand his self-imposed limitations, the workings of the mind, how to retrain himself in its proper use, unlock its abilities, better serve himself and others, and continue the eternal objective of becoming a co-creator with God. It is written in the voice of Jesus Christ with references to Christianity. There are differences between it and what is found in the Bible. It presents a direct contemporary dictation of Jesus' message, as opposed to the original, which is the recollections of individuals several decades after his departure. The Seth books, on the other hand, are oriented towards the more motivated, spiritually aware individual. Many of the lessons in A Course in Miracles are presented throughout these books in condensed form. Someone who has studied the course would find them an easier read. Also, it would improve their understanding of many of the concepts presented in both materials. So, the course is definitely a prerequisite for the Seth materials. Seth presented himself as someone who went through the reincarnation cycle on Earth, transcended to the great beyond, and came back to share his vast knowledge, wisdom, and experience with us. He did so because this is the path he chose, to be a teacher in different dimensions of existence. He stated that we've strayed from our original objective. His task was to help get us back on track and provide the spiritual resources and insights necessary for our continued progress. To accomplish this, he opened a window to that infinite, unknown spiritual reality. From this, we got exercises on how to prepare ourselves to become aware of our expanded abilities, the numerous layers of reality available to us, instructions on how to access the aids, guides, and blueprints available, ideas on how to live our lives and structure our societies, and much, much more. These are radically different to anything we are familiar with or can even begin to imagine. What we are aware of can barely be considered, even in the most generous interpretation, the tip, or even the tip of the iceberg. They have the potential to radically transform us and life on this planet. He states that we have advanced to the point where not only are we ready, but very much in need of this knowledge to continue our progress in a constructive and progressive manner. Any and all will benefit to the extent they are willing to study them and engage in the numerous lessons presented. Those coming to the end of the reincarnation cycle will benefit greatly. Every imaginable or as yet imagined topic is covered in the books. Here's a sample. Dreams, reincarnation, death, time, sex, the psyche, God or all that is, Jesus, health, illness, voodoo, LGBTQ, UFOs, weather, Atlantis. The books should be read in the same sequence as they were written, as there is a vertical building of concepts. Multiple readings are necessary and highly recommended. So after years of studying these two sets of materials, it is clear to me that they are connected and very much needed. The first event, Jesus' ministry over 2,000 years ago, shaped the future that followed and got us to the second event, the channeling of A Course in Miracles in New York City and the Seth books in Elmira. In each era, the need for the ideas and knowledge presented was great. The world has changed significantly in the past 2,000 years. The stakes and magnitude of the challenges we face in this era are much bigger. Just from the 1960s to the present, they have grown exponentially. Are the root causes of the problems fundamentally different from when Jesus first walked the earth? Suffice to say, we need solutions, and we need them now. The central ideas resonating throughout all of the materials is that we create our own reality, and our point of power to do so is now. We have at our disposal all the tools, resources, blueprints, guides, and aids to create whatever reality we want, individually and collectively. The future, whether we realize it or not, has a vote in this also. It has always exercised its preference by sending us enlightened individuals to deliver the necessary messages. That is, what we were able to digest at those times. Satya Sai Baba was one of the more recent. He lived in Puttaparthi, located in Andhra Pradesh, India, and died in 2011. He is credited with doing many of the things that Jesus did, probably more so, as he lived for 84 years. The Course in Miracles is for us to become more aware of ourselves, the workings of our mind, and how to retrain ourselves in its proper use. The Seth books are to increase our awareness of reality and how to more effectively participate in it. He states that by 2075, this new consciousness will be commonplace. Our responsibility in all of this is to digest this information, this knowledge, and put it to use. This way, we can truly solve the numerous challenges confronting us, so we can continue our progress in living more constructive, productive, fulfilling lives, towards the ultimate goal of becoming co-creators with our Creator. I've been studying A Course in Miracles and the Seth materials for quite some time, 17 years and counting. During that time, I have faced many challenges and achieved growth in many areas. Peace of mind, dreams, ESP abilities, relations with others, and greater control of my life are some. The Course in Miracles advises us to listen, learn, and do. I've spent several years listening and learning. Now I'm ready to do something. The task I've given myself is to create video recordings of the materials using the text section of A Course in Miracles as the primary. The format will be: read a section following the order in the book. Unpack and extract its essential knowledge. Include anything relevant or complementary from the Seth materials. Provide practical examples on how to apply this knowledge. Naturally, I'll be drawing on my understanding and experiences. This is going to take a while. There are 272 sections divided over 31 chapters. Some of the sections are short, a few paragraphs. Others go on for pages. I plan on limiting the recordings to 30 minutes. Don't want to challenge anyone's attention span. Long sections will be split into multiple recordings. I'll be using the public domain text section of the book. I recommend that the recordings be listened to in the sequence they are made. I won't make any guarantees, but I'm confident that all who listen will benefit. Hopefully, many questions will also be answered. The next recording in the sequence will be titled Introduction. Hope you join me.